The deputy's hand was resting on his holster when he told me I needed to leave my own property immediately. I stood there on the wraparound porch of my mountain cabin, barefoot in my flannel pajamas, holding a steaming mug of coffee while 4 sheriff's cruisers idled in my driveway. Behind them, a tow truck driver looked confused. And behind him stood the entire board of the Pine Ridge Estates HOA, led by their president, Patricia Gladstone, who was jabbing her finger at me like she was conducting an angry orchestra. Patricia's voice carried across the morning air with a shrill intensity. She screamed that I was trespassing on her community's premium vacation property. The deputy repeated her claim, saying the HOA president insisted this cabin now belonged to Pine Ridge Estates. I took a slow sip of my coffee, savoring the moment before I would reveal just how wrong they all were. Then I walked inside, retrieved a manila folder from my desk and handed the deputy my property deed. Then I pulled out another deed and another. By the time I was done, I had spread out 17 different land ownership documents across my porch railing, each one proving that I owned not just this cabin, but the entire valley surrounding Pine Ridge Estates. My name is James Harper, and I'm a retired land surveyor who moved to Falcon Heights Valley 5 years ago. I bought my property at a state auction when the old timber company that owned everything went bankrupt. The parcel I purchased was massive, 800 acres of pristine mountain, land with a renovated cabin right in the center. What I didn't realize at the time was that a developer had bought a small section in the middle of my land to build Pine Ridge Estates, a collection of 50 cookie-cutter homes governed by the most aggressive HOA in the state. Patricia Gladstone had been elected HOA president 3 times running, mostly because nobody else wanted to deal with her tyrannical approach to neighborhood management. She was a real estate agent by day and a professional busybody by night. The kind of person who measured grass height with a ruler and sent violation notices for mailboxes that were 2 shades off from the approved color palette. She ran Pine Ridge Estates like her personal kingdom, and she had recently decided that my cabin, which she could see from the community's hiking trail, was an eyesore that needed to be brought under HOA control. The trouble started 6 months ago when Patricia sent me what she called a friendly welcome packet. It arrived via certified mail containing HOA bylaws, a fee schedule, and a compliance checklist for my cabin. The cover letter, written in Patricia's distinctive purple ink, explained that since my property was visible from Pine Ridge Estates, it fell under their aesthetic jurisdiction. I threw it in the trash. She sent another one the next week, this time with late fees already added. I used it to start my fireplace. When I didn't respond to her letters, Patricia escalated to what she called community wellness checks. Every Sunday morning, she would lead a group of board members on a nature walk that conveniently passed by my property line. They would stand there with clipboards, taking photos and making notes about my cabin's non-conforming paint color, my unapproved garden gnomes, and my failure to maintain what Patricia called proper suburban standards. I would wave at them from my porch, sometimes while cleaning my hunting rifle, which usually sent them scurrying back to their neighborhood. Patricia's next move was more creative. She started listing my cabin on the Pine Ridge Estates website as a community amenity available for resident rental. She advertised it as a rustic retreat, perfect for weekend getaways, complete with photos she had taken with a telephoto lens. She even created a booking calendar and started collecting deposits from residents who wanted to use what she called the HOA Heritage Cabin. The first family showed up on a Friday evening in July, carrying sleeping bags and coolers. Genuinely confused when I told them they had been scammed by their own HOA president. Things reached a breaking point during the Pine Ridge Estates annual Labor Day celebration. Patricia had organized what she called a community expansion ceremony, where she planned to officially annex my property into the HOA. She brought a crowd of residents, a local news crew she had invited to cover the historic moment, and even hired a marching band from the local high school. They all marched up my private road with Patricia at the front, carrying a ceremonial HOA flag she planned to plant on my porch. I met them at my property line with my lawyer, Robert Blackwood, and the county sheriff, who happened to be my poker buddy. Patricia announced to the crowd and cameras that she was reclaiming this abandoned property for the good of the Pine Ridge Estates community. She said that squatters like me were destroying property values and that the HOA had a moral obligation to restore order. That's when she called 911, claiming I was threatening her by standing on my own land. The responding deputies were not the ones Sheriff Thompson had sent. These were from the next county over, responding to what Patricia had reported as an armed standoff. She had told dispatch that a dangerous squatter was holding HOA property hostage and threatening innocent families. The lead deputy, clearly annoyed at being pulled into this drama, asked me for identification and proof of ownership. That's when I produced my folder of documents. The first deed showed I owned the cabin and surrounding 50 acres. The second showed I owned the access road Patricia and her parade had just used. The third through 10th deeds covered various parcels surrounding Pine Ridge Estates. But the real showstopper was deed number 11, which proved I owned the land underneath the Pine Ridge Estates Community Center, their pool, and their tennis courts, all due to a surveying error the developer had made years ago. The deputy's eyes widened as he read through each document. Patricia's face turned from triumphant pink to ghostly white as the deputy explained the situation to her. Not only was I not squatting, but Patricia and the entire HOA board were technically trespassing on my land. Moreover, by collecting money. For rentals of my cabin, she had committed fraud. By filing a false police report about an armed standoff, she had committed a crime. And by bringing a news crew to document everything, she had created evidence of her own crimes. The deputy asked if I wanted to press charges, and I said yes to everything. My lawyer, Robert, had been preparing for this moment for months. He pulled out a thick stack of additional documents, including cease and desist orders for the HOA, invoices for unauthorized use of my private road, calculated at commercial rates, and a lawsuit for defamation based on Patricia's repeated public statements about me being a squatter. He also presented evidence that Patricia had been pocketing the cabin rental deposits for herself rather than putting them in the HOA account, which constituted embezzlement. The news crew that Patricia had invited was now focused entirely on her as she tried to explain how this misunderstanding had occurred. She stammered something about property lines being suggestions rather than laws, then claimed I had somehow forged all the deeds, then accused the county of conspiracy against Pine Ridge Estates. The marching band had already started walking back down the mountain, and the HOA board members were slowly backing away from their president as she continued her increasingly unhinged rant. The Real Estate Commission revoked Patricia's license the following week after the news segment aired, showing her committing fraud on camera. The HOA board held an emergency meeting where they voted unanimously to remove her as president and ban her from holding any board position for life. The district attorney filed charges for fraud, embezzlement, and filing a false police report. Patricia's mugshot made the front page of the local paper under the headline, HOA President Arrested for 800-Acre Mistake. At her sentencing, 6 months. Later, Patricia stood before the judge in the same purple suit she had worn to every HOA meeting. The judge ordered her to pay $75,000 in restitution to the residents she had defrauded, $50,000 in fines to the county, and sentenced her to 18 months in prison for felony fraud. Patricia's jaw dropped as the bailiff approached with handcuffs, and she screamed that this was all a misunderstanding, that she was just trying to improve the community, that I had somehow tricked everyone. Her voice echoed through the courtroom as they led her away, still insisting she had done nothing.